I'm going to call together the committee meeting on human resources and take a roll call. Joan? Yep. Brian?
Here.
And I'm here too. So do we have an approval for the agenda?
Move approval of the agenda.
Second.
No public comments that I've received. All right, then Brian, you have some retirement packages you want to present.
Sure. Kind of continuing the topic that we started with last month, put together one potential option of a way to put an incentive together for early retirement. And so I apologize for the way this presented, but when I created or shifted it from a sheet or drawing a blank here, with all the little boxes, thank you, to a PDF, it wouldn't print on one page. And so what I focused on, this one focuses on, is something that all employees that we were talking about have in common, which is the value of a sick day upon retirement. You'll note that not all days are currently valued the same. For hourly staff, their days is currently valued at $120 per day, versus a teacher whose days are valued at 95. But
Sorry, can't
all
figure
three get to use these as part of the HRA contribution. And I guess along with that, pointing out in teachers, we have, there's two other groups of teachers. There's the teachers that were hired April 1st, 2008. They receive an annual year of service contribution. So if a teacher has taught for 30 years, 30 times $1,200. And that is not put into the HRA until that year that they retire. So that's not an annual contribution. That's a determined value at the end of their teaching career. They also receive an annual contribution that goes into an interest-bearing account of $640. Any teacher hired after April 1st of 2000, it should be April 1st of 2008, not 2021. They receive an annual contribution of $1,040 into that interest-bearing account, and there's vesting that will occur, for them to get to that full value. But those are different. But because there is no annual contribution made into the hourly group, I did not include an option, at this time with that, because looking at consistency across employee groups. However, I bring that up saying that if we want to continue to explore things, we could have conversation or investigate potentially adjusting the years of service value. In terms of an annual contribution, we would really only be able to talk about what we could do this year in that realm. Can't go backwards for those, or we could potentially look at something else there as well. But this simply talks about sick days and a value of a sick day. If you scroll down to the next page, currently for hourly people, if they have a bank of 120 days, which is the max number that they can be paid out for upon retirement, that value, changing of the value to $200 means that we would spend an additional $9,600 per individual. 225, 12,600, $250, 15,600. That's in addition to the current max value that's on the left. If we talk about the teachers hired April 1st, 2008, their max value with a full bank of 120 days is 11,400. If we increase that per diem to 200, the increased amount that we would provide to that teacher would be 12,600. and so on. And you'll note that because the teachers have the same number of cap of days, it's 120 days, it's the same sick day value. Whether they were hired pre-2008 or post-2008, those numbers are all the same because it would be treated the same. Guess, and so now kind of the point of this is just further discussion. I mean, seeing that, what are your reactions to it? Is there differences that you would like us to explore? Thoughts that you have about the idea still?
Brian, if I could just
Sure.
add for just a minute. So the premise again behind all of this is an increased benefit for retirement would be funded out of our district post-employment benefit trust fund, which is Fund 73. So let's just say hypothetically, this committee endorsed the $200 amount. And 10 people took us up on it. It costs $126,000. If they're all teachers. So 10 teachers, $126,000. The $126,000, because Brian mentioned all of this is deposited into an HRA account for post-employment benefits, could be funded out of our Fund 73 Employee Benefit Trust Fund. The savings would then occur from staff turnover, and in general, we do have staff savings from turnover, and I know this committee was interested in seeing that data at some point once we have it all finalized. The savings would be in our Fund 10 or our Fund 27, which are our main operating budgets. The reason why we would like to make every effort we can to free up money next fiscal year is the board has approved new compensation systems for teachers and a 15-year schedule for hourly folks. Those were both approved this past summer. Then, of course, shortly thereafter, the governor's budget ended up being zero for schools. So we're going into a very challenging budget situation next year where freeing up any funds that we can between Funds 10 and 27 will then help us fund the compensation systems we've approved, while any added costs from a program like this are funded from a separate fund, Fund 73. This is a creative way for us to use some of the strengths that we have financially in other funds to benefit us during times when the state has approved an increase of zero. So kind of keep in mind the idea behind this is to free up operational funds really to be reinvested in staff through pay increases while providing a higher benefit level out of a different fund that will not impact our operations. So that's kind of the goal at a higher level. The committee brought up a great idea last time was, hey, if we're going to do this, let's get it out there so the HR team can be proactive in replacing staff. So we're not late to the game of trying to hire people, right? Get it out there outside of our traditional process of letting us know, let's call it spring break time frame, like right around in March, let us know you're retiring. This could come with, this is a special program being offered by the board, but hypothetically, you've got to let us know by January 31st if you want to take advantage of it, because we're intending to post your job and start searching for replacements early. And hey, the normal retirement plan is still there in March if you can't decide, you know, because that's in the handbook, right? This is just above and beyond a one-time only, and here's why we're doing it. So Brian's presenting some options here for your just first read to say, what do you think about this? Because at some point we want to hone in on something that this committee would support to bring forward to the full board. And we've heard a lot about consistency across groups. So this would be an approach that could be viewed as consistency across groups with using the sick leave piece as a way to accomplish this goal. So anything else, Brian?
Does this proposal, if people choose to use that, do they have to notify earlier than they would? If we set a date that's earlier than the normal retirement.
That's kind of up to us. I would say that would probably be a very good strategic choice on our part to do that. Kind of as Steve had mentioned, it would give us that opportunity to put it out early, ask for an earlier
Than March.
decision and before March 15th and then react accordingly. And the only thing I would add is that the consistency, obviously what I did here is a total dollar value, right? It's $200 or $225 or $250. Another way that you could look at consistency is you could talk about a percentage, right? And then, there's, the numbers would not be uniform from one employee group to another, but you could say that the percentage increase is the same from one to another. I didn't pencil that out, but certainly, we certainly could if that was something you wanted me to look at.
So if we use this across the board, that would include like custodians.
Correct. Yep, it would be
But
all
they
hourly
don't
groups.
necessarily work on a school. So that
Well, it would, right now, the current language that we have for hourly employee groups is that they need to give us a 3-month retirement notice. And that, in some cases, we have obviously custodians, 12-month, maintenance, 12-month, many administrative assistants are 12-month. We do have some 11-month, and we have some, school year employees as well. It obviously, that earlier date, all of them could be set up, a date could be picked in a way that we would have that information prior to the next school year's budget. But their retirement dates would, could be different. Obviously, a custodian could notify us that they're taking this opportunity and they could finish prior to the end of the school year. Or they could say, I'll take the opportunity, but or we could tell them, we'll offer this, but you got to stick around till X date. School year employees, obviously we would work to keep them through the school year.
Does this early retirement is a good idea for the higher end, but is this going to be a problem with hourly wage people that we are having trouble filling anyway?
Well, I guess the potential exists. I mean, the labor market is not forecasted to be better.
No.
If we're talking about hiring in the summer, spring, summer, or even next year for that matter. So would we have to rely on some of the things that this committee and the board have done and we've set up as a district to entice new people in?
Mhm.
We probably would still. But in general, right, I mean, again, as Steve said, in general, when someone is retiring, typically from us, they're going to be more top end of the pay scale. And many people are not looking to get new positions at that same level of experience. So typically you're going to hire someone with less experience, lower end of the pay scale. And then you're making up with that delta. And the bigger chunks, I mean, it's fair to say the bigger chunks that we will get ahead on will be, a teacher's contract as opposed to an hourly worker's contract, but that will make a difference too, right? I mean, every dollar that we can use, Fund 73 for and clear money for it in Fund 10 can go to raises for all employee groups.
I would say, Joan, I think we probably want to write this, that the individual would need to complete this school year. We would not want 5 paras taking this in January and saying we're done, giving a 3-month notice. I think we would want you to complete the school year. The advantage of getting a notice early for like a head custodian potentially is then we can post the head custodian job. We'll probably have internal applicants for it. We could then know early on who's gonna be the person that's gonna be the head custodian at X school. Then you can post the job that ultimately will be open. And it would give us the time, even with positions that maybe aren't as closely tied to the academic calendar. I think time would be beneficial no matter what the person's position is in this labor market. And if we offered, some program like this, offered it like through the end of January, so folks could think about it over the holiday break, turn it in, you could approve them at the February board meeting and we could get going, or if you wanted it done earlier than that, we can move it sooner than that. But I do think this is a creative way to try to move into a very challenging budget situation. Because even if this frees up $125,000, you've seen with the classified schedule, that money can take us pretty far with hourly pay increases. So anything that we can do, and generally speaking, is this enough money to cause someone to say, I'm not gonna work 3 years? No.
That's what I wondered.
This isn't gonna grab the person who's 55 and they were gonna work till 58. But this might cause someone who was considering it and was either, I'm gonna do it this year, next year. It might be just a little bit of an incentive to have someone do it. Certainly you can go bolder with the plan. You can be more conservative with the plan. It all depends on what the goals are. That's why Brian wanted to share some options that, if you wanted to draw more people's attention, on the teacher end, you would certainly draw more attention by looking at the years of service, like Brian just mentioned. Like that's going to draw more attention. The challenge to that is we don't currently have that program in place for hourly staff. So it'd be two very different early retirement plans, but we have two very different handbook languages anyways. So you would just have to be comfortable with whatever approach you would want to take. But a teacher would be much more interested if their years of service amount was changed, because that can add up to a larger dollar amount. It all depends on what our goal would be. If we want to try to attract more individuals, you want to have it be a more attractive program. If you wanted to attract people who might have retired anyways and get an earlier commitment, or maybe someone who's going to retire the next year, then you go at the lighter end of this idea.
Do we know how many of our staff are in that 58, 68, right?
I can't quote that to you off the top of my head, but I can have that. I mean, I could have that for, I could get it for you later this afternoon.
So we had, what, a handful, 3 or 4 early retirements this past year that we
Oh, like requests for,
request,
yeah,
but that was
2 to,
for some other
yeah, two
health
to,
related issues.
yeah,
as well, but
two, I think, special requests.
Are you asking us to suggest one of these to the board, or just like these and let the board decide?
Well, and what I would say is if you continue to like the idea or the concept of this, but you want more information, such as what Brian's asking, like what's a potential number of folks that would could apply for it? What would that potential cost look like? I think it's more, what would help me do that is if you give me a little bit of guidance of we like this number or we like this range of numbers, or we want you to look at this concept, I can certainly come back. We can schedule another October meeting with and give us a little bit more, do some more costing, more detailed costing. This is certainly very conceptual, and it also, I guess, Joan, for me, is what would you talked about? Well, how interesting would it be, or a different person, a rough number to think about is right now, our retiree health plan for a teacher is about $1,600 a month, their cost, single plan. And so that, if you start to think about what does some of these additional increases mean? You know, is it another year or part of a year of insurance? Kind of gives you a sense of what they're what it means to them in those dollars.
Now, another idea that I like that Brian just mentioned is a percentage increase from what you would have otherwise received. So you could pick an amount that would be equal to everyone, right? So if you were hourly or member of the teaching staff, if you picked something like a one-time, let's just say 33% increase in what you would have received, no matter what employee group you're in, that's an easy calculation based on your years of service, based on whatever you were gonna get, we add X to it. Now, you could do it for teachers, we're gonna add 33%, but for support staff, we're gonna add this because you don't have an hourly. We would just need to know if you like a percentage approach, if you like what Brian has here. Do you like the idea of being more aggressive, or do you like the idea of being more conservative? We were just looking for some feedback because the intent would be at the next meeting, we would flush this out even further and maybe have some ideas that you might be interested in starting to bring to the school board.
It would help me to know what the differential is in who retired and who we hired this year. Like,
Okay.
what kind of money are we talking about? And Fran, what did you say the monthly insurance? is?
A teacher on a single would be
A
about
single.
$1,600 their cost.
Monthly?
That's for single or family, right?
I think that's, if you take 1,600 times 12, that's way more than a
Yeah,
single.
that
Oh. Maybe that,
that must be a.
That's a PDF conversion issue, just like we had here.
Because,
Yeah,
you know,
well,
You had it correct, it's the conversion.
when
yeah,
you
I'll have to,
think of what's valuable,
sure,
you know, they need this for insurance. But they're not gonna get at least a year of it.
sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll definitely, what I'm visualizing is a number that I gave to a retiree. So I'm probably visualizing that wrong in my memory, so I'll definitely get you that number too.
I agree with you, Joe. And I mean, you would want to know, like, my insurance is covered for a full year extra,
Right,
right?
that would be
Something-
valuable.
Right, something valuable,
Right.
right? Like if I'm on a family plan and the family plan is 16,000, whatever, that if I do this early, and that's another way to offer, I mean, that is used commonly by districts.
Right, give them
So,
a year's of insurance.
An X year of insurance. So that's another strategy to go. And then the value is the same no matter what employee group you're in, right? So if you're a custodian drawing the family plan, it's the same extra value as you are if you're a teacher drawing the family plan. So that's another angle that you can look to offer something. In fact, Middleton did something like that in the past. So it is commonly done.
That, yeah,
Family HMO is 1,623.
so it's a single about 7.
That would probably be a decent guess. Might be a little lower than that.
And we could certainly bring some things back around that theme as well to look at.
Okay.
So does that give you direction then?
And so we can put some more of that, get some more of that financial information pulled together, and then look for probably try to schedule another committee meeting late October.
Yeah, like I would like to see sort of our staff age 50 on over.
Right,
Sure.
how many are we talking?
Where are we
about?
staggered here every, 50 to 53,
Mhm.
and see where if we're really gonna, sort of like enrollment, where we sort of see it coming. I'd like to see some of that.
Because you have to be 57 to draw your,
55.
you can drive it.
Yeah, there's a
A
slight,
full?
no,
at
there's a
55?
slight penalty. 55 to 57 has an age reduction penalty. 57 with 30 years of service has
Isn't
no,
full.
has a full. But there are definitely people retiring at 55 and being comfortable with that slight age reduction factor for a variety of reasons. Okay.
So kind of the next topic we connects to a little bit of the discussion that occurred last evening at the budget committee. The idea that we as a district would purchase some additional vans and then encourage current employees to take on extra hours to transport special needs students in those vans to and from school, diverting it then away from other routes or other bus routes or other providers, keeping it a little bit more in-house. And I can have Steve obviously talk a little bit more about some of the benefit to that, and what that projected cost would be. But related to that, there is kind of a job classification, both in the state and in county, that would indicate, if someone is identified as a driver, what does that mean? So we have, so again, first information I provide you is kind of the median hourly rate for that in the state, and then the median county rate for a driving role. Driving role means that person does not, this is not a bus driver, this is not a CDL situation. This means, their responsibilities are driving, but they don't have to have a special license in order to do it per se. We have in our own district a role that would fit that definition called courier within the maintenance and custodial department. And so I've shown what that schedule is effective yesterday, effective Sunday, that's the new scale. So someone in the custodial, a custodian and a courier, that they're on the same scale. That scale is the column on the left. And then for comparison's sake, because what we are kind of expecting is that many of these roles would be filled by folks that are already working with those special needs students in a paraeducator role, kind of showing you with a corresponding level of experience, where is that person at in an hourly rate in the paraeducator role. And then for, at least discussion's sake, a starting point would be if we had someone that was a para with 2 years of experience earning $16.85 for their paraeducator schedule, for the time that they would punch in for driving before or after school, what that hourly rate would boost to, so that it would be an increase, they would see a bit of an increase that would make them, compared to, how that would be in the state and county. And so that, again, concept, any of it can be adjusted, but that's kind of where we were at.
But this person is alone in the van with pretty high needs kids,
They
and nobody else is in the van.
They could be, that's would be part of the idea. They would be driving that student in. We have both students that would be in wheelchairs, so you'd have your wheelchair vans, but we also have students that we do transport for different reasons that are not in a wheelchair, but perhaps need, based on their needs or their plan, they might need separate transportation than the general student body.
Personally, I just don't think that's enough money for the responsibility person can share. And this is in many cases, this is a para-educator who normally has another adult in the room when they're doing their servicing, and now they're going to be kind of alone. To do that, if you pay them for an hour or 2 hours, to pay them another $1 or $2, I just don't think that's enough money for the responsibility.
I think the one other thing to keep in mind, Joan, is, so this would be, in general, most folks' addition to their day. So it would be additional, it wouldn't just be like they're making $1 more. This would be, we need you to start earlier and go get the student and bring them in.
Okay, so they're gonna be making that whole amount.
Yeah,
They're gonna make the
yeah,
whole amount.
yeah, not just the difference. I apologize
Oh,
if I
I thought
characterized.
they were just.
No,
gonna be
no, they
paying
would- they would
extra
go-
$1 for it.
No, they would go to that whole hourly rate. So for example, that paraeducator I'd referenced, in their paraeducator role, 16.85 per hour for their, their scheduled 37.5 hours. Any hours that they would have driving would add to that total, potentially put them into overtime. And it would be they would then be the driving rate for them would be $17.87 an hour. And if they went into an overtime situation, so 40 hours, because they'd be getting overtime due to 2 roles, they actually get a blended rate. So you take, 17.87 plus 16.85, add them up, average them out, and then overtime is time and a half over the blended rate.
The other thing to keep in mind, our hourly staff have a graduated schedule for benefit, the district's contributions to the benefit. So if they, let's say, are working 7 hours a day and this causes them to work an extra hour, they now go to the 8-hour contribution level for the district. So it just depends on where they're currently at in the benefit. This could also improve their district's contributions to their benefit and reduce the amount coming out of their paycheck. So the concept behind it is we want this to be valuable to the individuals who would take on that additional work. And part of the picture is the wages. Part of the picture is the increased district contribution to their benefits. Again, assuming they're taking them, assuming they're taking a single family plan or down. So there'd be the value on both ends, depending on how many hours they're currently working. And as Brian said, it may push someone into an overtime situation. If they're already working 7.5 hours a day with the student, this is an hour a day of driving. This will push them into the overtime. And at least initially, the students that we're looking to transport them due to wheelchair accessibility. And so it's more along that lines than student A or student B cannot be on the bus due to behavior reasons. It's more due to accessibility of vehicles and our inability to have a bus driver go do that while we don't have extra bus drivers. And so, yes, we would have to be very careful about that, Joan, if it is a situation where we do believe a student needs to be separated from the typical
Well,
bus.
and
due
I
to
didn't
behavior
mean
issues.
separated for behavioral, but some of them have medical needs.
Oh, sure.
And if somebody's driving and they have somebody with medical
Sure.
need that all of a sudden they need to respond to. it's- So what do our bus drivers make hourly?
They're over 20. And they do have minimum hours of pay. So they're paid higher than this, but of course, then they don't have access to benefits and they would never enter into overtime. So there's some differences between the two, but their schedule would be higher than this,
But without them.
but without benefits and without potential.
All right.
Well, I like the idea that you're using paraeducators who the students know. That's a plus. And it's kind of a consistent follow through. So I think that's good. And if you can, choose who, because we do have special ed kids on regular routes that are mobile, right? And do we have any paraeducators that have to ride with them?
most of our students, I believe, Joan, to your point, it is, even with the bus driver, it's just the bus driver and the student.
Yeah.
Or it's a bus load of kids, the bus driver and the student.
I thought there were some special ed students whose parents had to get on the bus with them.
I would not be able to speak to exact, I know that you're correct, that we've done that, we have had that in the past.
Yeah.
I do not know if we have anyone assigned to do that, something like that this year, but yes, it definitely has been in the past, because I've been involved in conversations with principals and employees about their ability to do that, or et cetera, so, but I don't know if we're doing it right now.
And we
I
don't
think
really
that
have
was
any
tied to some very specific health that were kind of down articulated.
And we do not have any, what I would consider special ed bus routes right now, because we just can't. We don't have any extra drivers, so typical special ed routes would have assistance if needed. So it definitely, we used to, as a district, have special ed routes, and we used to have our own drivers for special ed routes, but that was a while ago.
So you will just advertise or kind of hand select people that you might like to do this?
Well, I think we would post it as an opportunity for folks. I mean, obviously, we would probably target some of our communications right to the buildings, to the groups of paraeducators that work in that building. Because I mean, there's that, as Judy mentioned, that relationship aspect is valuable. But we would, open it to a larger audience too, and see, it'd be great to be in a position where we could make those choices of, hey, this is somebody who's got a relationship, let's build on that. But obviously, we look for the role and cast a net to get it.
How many couriers do you think we need?
Oh, drivers?
Drivers, yeah.
Two is the plan, because that's what the board, it will be kind of a two-step process. I presume the van proposal will go first. Because the budget committee advanced the van proposal last night. And then if that would advance and be passed by the whole board, we could talk about this second part of it at that time.
Right, so we gave the nod to research the fans, but we didn't the purchase yet. Right.
So do you want us to give the nod to this to go forward to the board?
If you support it, yes, because it would be after the agenda item for the purchase of the vans, and they would go hand in
Yeah,
hand.
the van recommendation goes on Monday nights. We'd like this to go with it.
Okay.
Okay, I would make the motion to approve the increase for the driver as stated in this.
I'll second that.
In favor?
Aye.
So moved. And then we have the clinic, wellness clinic.
Yeah, this is a concept that's been, I think, historically discussed a little bit within both the HR and insurance committee groups. But the concept, it's actually just the description is the only part, there's no handout to this one, is I'm looking for your thoughts of expanding the access to the clinic to employees that are not currently eligible for our health plan, are not selecting our health plan, so that, we can promote wellness across employee groups, and we also can use it as a recruitment aid. We have room to do this, and so kind of to give a little bit of information on that. Our most recent month, August, we had a 32% fill rate on appointments, which is good. It's uptrending, which is phenomenal. We're starting to get that rebound from our COVID phase. But that still has a tremendous amount of access available. Employees love it. It's, often, almost always, you can get an appointment the same day. But we would love to give more people a chance to use it and still have that access. And so kind of the information I looked at was if we offered it to all of our current employees that are either not eligible, that's gonna add about another 52 employees.
What makes them not eligible? Just not
Less,
living long enough?
right now, the only folks that can use the clinic are those that are in our health insurance plan. And so that the first level of eligibility is they need to work 30 hours per week. And then they have to elect to do it, elect to participate. And so this would be add another 52 employees based on that. Right now, we have some 2 employee groups that can take cash instead of taking the health plan. That would be another 93 employees that could potentially access it. And we have 45 employees that have just waived it. You know, they get it from, presumably they get it from a spouse, or they could be still under their parents' plan if they're young. So that's 190 additional employees. If we consider that our usage rate of employees would stay consistent, our employees do use the clinic more than their families do, or their dependents do, we would increase our usage rate up to about 30. Again, if it was just straight extrapolation, we would increase our usage rate up to about 37%, which still would leave us with space. But it would bring us some of those other benefits of, you know, we're now going to treat our employees more consistently across the district. We're going to maybe give access to folks that don't have an easy access somewhere else, which hopefully could have an effect on our attendance rate of employees. But it also, it's just it's another recruitment lever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can now say, hey,
And once they've tried it, they may like it. And so,
well, in our satisfaction rates are outstanding, right? I mean, the folks that use our clinic love our clinic. You know, and that's about 65% of our employment, that's about 65% of our appointments are our employees. The other 35 is their family. And those folks, I mean, we get great feedback about the experience. So I'm not worried at all about affecting the quality of the experience, especially with, you know, what we would see as an increased amount of use. There would still be ample room for folks to get access easily.
Do you have a breakdown on what services are being used the most?
Yeah, we actually month to month, we can kind of see what the folks do. That definitely changes. Give me a second, I can pull up our most recent report.
While you're pulling that up, would you allow family members in this new group or just the employees?
Well, right now, the idea, I think, would be to start with just employees. And then get an experience, you know, get a chance for us to see what happens. You know, how does, you know, obviously data is helpful, but it doesn't necessarily always reflect exactly what we'll experience. So if we allowed employees in, we could see what capacity remains, what kind of experience do they have, and then perhaps we do start to look to expand beyond that. I mean, other ideas could be, these are our employees, right? These are our regular employees, full or part-time. But we also have, you know, would we have room or space to add some of our contractors? You know, our lamers drivers, our folks that work for Taher. I mean, so I mean, I think there's opportunities still to be explored, but the employee one would be kind of the next step.
yeah,
I personally would love to see the plan. I think it's been underutilized since we began. And I think it's hard for the staffing. I think a staff member, you know, our current, I think she's a nurse practitioner now, that's over there.
Yeah, Sarah Anderson.
I think she needs to have that stimulus in her day to use their
Mhm.
valued. And
Yeah.
I think there's just too much underuse over there. I would totally support this, and bring on the people?
In answer to your question, Brian, so our top 3 reasons for visits in August were pre-employment examinations, which, that's great, respiratory screenings and skin conditions. But, if we look at historical trends, the top medical reasons for usage in current would be, the others would be asthma, thyroid disorders, diabetes, hypertension, neurologic disorders, COPD. Then we start, we started to get down into like probably, they were, right now, the top referrals, there was 40 referrals within this period of time that the report was looking at. That's about 15 months, 16 months. They've dermatology, physical therapy, digestive health, ear, nose, and throat, and sportsmen. And this would be, if you wanted to kind of see more, Brian, I could always share with you the monthly report that we get from SSM as well.
They're saying it's underutilized right now.
It
We
is.
got
There's
room.
a ton of space.
We got room. Yep.
We got a lot of room.
I'm in favor of it as well.
And so kind of purpose is just, what I would want us to do is also kind of have this discussion with our insurance committee, because they would give them, some feedback that we vetted it out with the HR committee, give them an opportunity to hear and share ideas, but really continue the process of getting these doors open and getting it used more.
I like the idea of lamers and copper and other people that, it does allow them to stay on the job more rapidly if they have that.
Okay, so we're gonna pursue that then. Good.
Do you want any motion out of this committee or just?
I think just you acknowledging that you like the idea, we'll keep moving it.
And then the business restructuring office?
Yeah, this, just as we were kind of developing the agenda, a member of the business office staff has turned in their formal retirement request. The board will be taking action on that on Monday night, which puts us in a unique position to decide where we go moving forward. Right now, we don't have, again, this is a kind of a 3-month window of time. Person has requested a retirement, which puts it out into January. And before we go out and decide what we do or who we fill it with, I think this is an opportunity for us to talk about the broader administrative structure that was which has been a topic of discussion for both this committee and the full board. Because this is, again, one of those unique times. So the concept would be, or could be, that the current accounting specialist position would be replaced by a director of business services. And where is this coming from? If Rebecca, if you could open the administrative org chart, this particular flow chart was created by one of our district's great artists.
That's you.
And what it speaks to is the idea of when Steve was originally in a role here, he was, the director of business services. And then what occurred next was that, his position, and he was elevated to executive director of business services. And then, obviously a number of positions were slated within or underneath that. And he's kind of worn the dual hat of that, you know, that role, executive director, and while being a, you know, commonly known to a business manager, right? And so this would give us an opportunity to provide that business manager work, that service, that kind of that hands-on, you know, building of budgets, creating board materials, you know, working through all those things that are important to keep us operating and paying our bills and keeping the lights on, and giving Steve a chance to step into that more strategic role that would come with that, or come with his current role. And now some of the current duties that are performed by the accounting specialist, you know, some of them would slide into this new business services role. Some of them could slide into the accounts payable role. Some of them could slide into the administrative assistant role that are within that department already. And to try to get a sense of what we're talking about here, how could we do this? Because it's not a simple dollar for dollar substitution. You know, an accounting specialist is an hourly position, but for purposes of comparison, what I've built it into is a salary. You know, we have those two kind of median wages, that again, state and county. And then if we start to look at where is again, director of business services, that position really equates to what most districts call a business manager. That is a salaried role. And if we look at someone with the responsibilities of this potential role, with the team that they would work with, but also organizationally answering to others, you're looking at somewhere in a range of 98 to 110. The difference between those two, I think we have to consider, could be made up a couple different ways. One of the most direct ways is that, you know, as Steve has worked through his health situations over the last couple of years, we have had to bring someone in from outside to keep, you know, we're required to have someone in that role moving forward. We've experienced those costs to bring folks in, whether that was the first year as a contractor through RW Baird, second year as an employee on a, you know, a limited contract, hourly arrangement, excuse me, daily arrangement. We would not have to do that if someone was on staff within this role. And then obviously there are other ways, current expenditures that we could show, and Steve is prepared to speak to, that could make up that difference, so that the net cost would not increase to the district. We would just be using current expenditures to make this change. So I'll kind of turn it, Steve, to you, if you, or Brian or Randy, whoever.
Steve in a second, but can you go back to the org chart for a second, since that was kind of the chart that I put together? You can leave it at the big size right there, it's fine. I mean, this was updated just recently, kind of with some of the shifts that we've done over the last year. But it was really compiled, if you go back probably, Joan, 4 or 5 years ago, we started to kind of talk about kind of our planning for how do we need to be situated as we start to trend towards. 14 years ago when I started here, we were at 3,300 kids. We're at 4,400 today. And if you go back 5 years ago, we were still structured as if we were 2,700 kids. We hadn't shifted. And it was a matter at that point to start adding assistant principals to our buildings. We started off by adding to the intermediate school, to Prairie, to the high school, to Heritage. We started looking at kind of how we put together, like we split up we created the director of technology position. We split the curriculum into elementary and secondary. We brought back from what we had 16 years ago, where we had director of special ed, director of student services. The items in the light blue were kind of like the next stages. These are the pieces that, as we would continue to move forward and opportunity arose, we would also see places where we could look at director of business services, assistant principal at Arboretum, and then looking at this, I use the example of like under special education coordinators who can push closer to the schools to work more closely with families and teachers and kids. So when LaDonna's position became a discussion with her announcement of retirement, Steve and I had a conversation about, is this a time where we utilize the things that Brian talked about and move forward with filling that position? Because the idea is we would not replace the position with someone. This would really be a reallocation of funds to then upgrade it to somebody with be a licensed business manager. I think that allows you a few things. It allows you to bring Steve into kind of that role that we envisioned, which was continuing to be kind of that second in charge in the district. It also brings into a piece that for any reason, if we do have a gap in service at any point, we have somebody on site who can take all of those pieces and move it forward without bringing in a third party. So those were all parts of our conversation that we kind of laid out, but that's the history of where this came from and as it's kind of evolved over time. Go ahead, Steve, if there's anything else to add.
I would just share that, in the discussions we've had, obviously we don't believe with a $0 budget coming from the state, that this would be the time that we would request additional funds for a position or expenditures in the business office. However, we do have a retirement that should cause us to ask the question, what is the best long-term fit for where the organization wants to go moving forward? There are opportunities within existing budgets that we manage to create permanent reallocations to cover the difference. And Randy's correct, the accounting specialist role would have to go away and would be replaced potentially by the position you see up there in blue. And we're not going to add it back. This isn't a thing like next July, it's going to be like, oh, well, we really need to add that back. The person that would take the role would need to take on many of the pieces of responsibility that job did. But there's reorganization that we can do within our department as far as who's doing what tasks. I'll give you an example. So we've learned through COVID that our community, our parents are really willing to partner with us on transportation. We had planned on going into this school year with the idea of, I'll call it going back to normal, meaning every family who lives in an address that can be routed and they're eligible for school board policy is routed on a bus, right? Because we have to be prepared to pick them up and we can't have 150 kids on an 80 passenger bus. So we route them, say this is going to be your bus. When we realized that we were going to have some bus driver challenges, we went back to our approach during COVID by asking parents to opt out. And we received a pretty positive response back saying, we're not going to be riding the bus, or we weren't intending to ride the bus. That significantly helped us from going for our normal 26 bus routes down to 19 for K through 4 and 22 for 5 through 12. With active management of transportation, we can set a goal of not going back to 26 routes. With looking at things like purchasing vans to provide special ed transportation, which will pay itself back in less than 2 years, instead of paying laners. there's significant dollars available to be reallocated as long as it can be actively managed. So other examples in the special ed transportation areas, we would have students that the treasurers would identify in the past the significant cost of transporting a student to Oconomowoc or McFarland or down to UW Hospital to work. We did that through lamers. If we start moving forward with more actively managing our transportation through looking at drivers of our own, through looking at vans of our own, we can continue to convert costs that were in the $50,000 range per route into district-owned vans and drivers that clearly will pay themselves off in a short period of time. My point on all of this is there are opportunities for us to more actively manage programs like transportation, where I can say, if the board wanted to state, we would like to approve this position, but not spend any more funds in the area that I manage, we can do that, and I have full confidence in doing that. By saying amongst the areas that we manage, we can reallocate funds. Whether, I mean, it's just one bus route is the difference between these two positions. And we're nowhere near 26. We were 19 for K through 4. So if we continue to do things like engage in parents and ask for opt-outs, more actively manage our routes, take a much closer attention to special ed routes, look at adding vehicles when we can. I know there's opportunities for us to reallocate the funds without tapping into new dollars to do so. So yes, there is a cost differential between the two positions. But can I confidently say that we can do it with more actively managing some of our existing expenditures? Yes. And can I say it that we're not going to then bring a request back for an accounting specialist? Yes. It would be the same number of people, but it would be posting it with a different job description than what's currently there for the accounting specialist. And taking a very close look at all of those very important job responsibilities of the accounting specialist and determine where would they be, who would they be done by. So I'm confident we can do it. It's just, we wanted to prompt the discussion about whether, is this the right time now to have that dialogue, given we have a retirement, given the conversations Randy's had with the board for many years on structure and long-term planning. Is this the right time to have that conversation, or isn't it? And we really wanted to get some feedback on this, because we could certainly post an accounting specialist position again, but I do think it would be much more difficult to come up with the funds needed for the position in blue if we weren't reallocating from one position to begin with.
I think the concept of the director of business services, when that was the shift, it was going to require a refiguring of that part. I don't think it was really viewed at the time as we put it to here that it was something that was an addition to already existing staffing levels.
So would this position be containing the accounting current position or responsibilities, and then additional responsibilities as well? So, I mean, I'm totally in favor of it. I'm just would like to spell it out for everybody. Is maybe a better idea would be to figure out, list sort of where you want to take it, what they would be doing, and if we know transportation, food service, but really how it sort of interacts with HR, facilities maintenance, and that kind of thing. But I mean, I'm all for it, but I think the questions will be like,
Yeah,
well,
I think
what's
that's a
gonna
really
increase?
good idea. How will your job change and how will Ladonna's job change? I think that that's a really good idea.
There's some nuts and bolts of the budget that Steve does that would get allocated over to this position.
Right.
And I think that's that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
So would seeing like job descriptions of the various roles and highlighting what would shift between the roles.
I think
something
that
along
would
those
be a good
lines.
idea.
sort of the relationship between sort of
Yeah.
who would work closely together. Maybe something might come off somebody else's plate a little bit.
And
And
if
shift.
you, Steve, if you could take something off of Randy's plate, that's a good shift too.
And that's, that's invaluable.
That's definitely part of the plan.
And, you know, I think we know that, but I think it's good for the public to know if we put this out. There's these moving blocks that I like the idea, of spell it out.
Yeah, it's more than just a positional value. It's a value amongst the department. So
Yeah, it's more than finding money to pay for it. It's,
Shifting workloads.
yeah, it's that workload description. And then I do think we need to be sensitive as we go through our next budget cycle, the assistant at our.
Agreed.
That's gonna be a.
We don't have one. These are proposed.
we
Those
don't
are
have
just.
one.
And
as
we don't
kind of-
have special education coordinators either.
And then those are probably down the line. The
Yeah.
blue items were ones that I think as we've articulated over time,
Mhm.
things that have not been done but are part of the visioning. And there's items on here that were blue that are now a different color.
Yeah.
That communication specialist used to be a blue box. Now it's obviously been actualized last year.
Well, I certainly think it's the right time to do it with Ladonna retiring. I think that all of that makes sense. I just think we need to be transparent.
Yep.
That's-
Would you like that to come back to Brian reference a meeting later in October with early retirement? Have that back and bring both these back?
I think that might be a good idea instead of heading right to the board with it.
Right.
I
Okay.
think, yeah, as long as we're gonna do that.
Is there anything else before we set future meetings?
Yeah, I don't think Tim's gonna come back for that, so I'll just take over that one. I mean, are there topics that you as a committee want to have on that later in October agenda?
It's kind of nice that all the salaries, all those pay increases are done. It was always such a stressful time.
Mhm.
yeah, like I said, I'd like to sort of see a chart of our
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and I mean,
possible retirements over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
and actually it could, like in forecast 5, there's a visual that actually shows you your experience split for teaching staff. But that's a, we just gotta pull a report and I can get you all flavors in that regard. So,
Put it in a big part for Julie. Or for Judy.
well, I mean, yeah, shrink it down, put it in like a 6 font and,
I gotta know. I know how to work this thing.
all right.
Just
Yeah.
can't print it off.
Do you, I know we'll we can set the meeting at the board level, but since we're together here, do you want to talk a little bit about like a date to put out at that time?
Kitty's not gonna be here.
Yeah,
And she might be.
I might be out of it by then.
Yeah, I just want to see the date, just articulate it on Monday.
So I mean, I would say, I'm not sure what plans you folks have. I mean, either the week, later in the week of the 18th, or actually anytime in the week of the 18th. The week of the 25th is a short week for the district, like in terms of that's when fall break falls for staff. I mean, that doesn't affect me per se, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a good week for me.
Okay.
We'll be out of town.
So will we set the levy on the 25th? Do we have that meeting set up?
We do, yes.
So we have the annual meeting on the 18th and set the levy on the 25th.
Yes.
the 19th through,
I can.
I have something on the
19th or
20th, but
Do you like this time of the day or do you want to go
I
later?
can't really do anything. I set it around nap time because I babysit on Tuesday, but he didn't even come today, so.
yeah, Brian, what works for you? I think you've
Yeah.
got more commitments.
I know early enough.
Early the better.
The 19th will be hard in the morning because we have a cabinet meeting. But that, again, if you like morning, the morning of the 20th. Somebody say that didn't work. for
Oh,
them.
morning would be okay. Morning of the 20th.
I mean, I could do morning of the 20th.
That would be good for me.
It's fine.
What's your time preference?
Well, we have coffee at 7, so.
You want to go, yeah, well, clearly not before the coffee, right? I want everyone to be
We don't want to go before
properly
coffee.
caffeinated before they arrive.
8-ish,
Sure.
8:15?
That works.
How about 8:15?
Yeah, then we can get over here.
And that's on the 20th.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
so moved.
So,
Steer.
Steve, I would be happy about what you presented.